Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to the Customer Privacy and Data Theatre. So today we're going to be talking about our latest consumer survey, the person behind the data. Just a couple of quick introductions. So my name's Charles Maloney, this is Leah Brennan. We're both account executives at Ketch. Now I presume you're all probably sat there with confused looks on your faces thinking, who are Ketch? So, very simply put, Ketch is a technology platform that helps brands like yours look after their data properly. It's as simple as that. Our founders, so the reason why Ketch existed, so our founders were actually responsible for Salesforce's GDPR privacy program. And throughout that process, they actually identified gaps and areas within consumer data privacy that needed to be filled. Hence, Ketch was born. So at the moment today, enforcement of rights on consumer data are becoming more and more relevant in the news. As you can see here, we're not short of headlines. Sephora, a French company, actually just got fined £1.2 million in the US for breach of CCPA, and they're a OneTrust customer, but we're going to gloss over that. And also as well, Halfords have just been fined £30,000 for sending 500,000 unwanted emails, or should I say unconsented emails. So it's just starting, okay? And what that is causing is this big divide between businesses and consumers. So, at the moment, there's 23% of the world in some form of data privacy regulation. Come next year, that's going to be 75%. So identifying the new regulations is going to become imperative for businesses and managing them. Also as well, identifying somebody is a complex process, so you'll need to have the identity graph, which will be able to stitch it all together. And capture is divorced from the data that exists today. So do you know where all your data is? What's in those data systems? Do you need it? How can you use it? And as technologies continue to get better, we need to evolve in order to make those correct changes. These are the complexities that businesses are facing. And what that's causing is this big divide between businesses and consumers. They can't keep up with the ever-growing demand of the consumers, which also ultimately decreases trust and value. We need to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that data privacy is not just a compliance issue to avoid fines and regulations. It affects our top-line growth. And it's an opportunity to build that trust and value, so why aren't we currently utilising it? Now, how do we do this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you over to Leah, who's going to run through the person behind the data consumer survey to explain how we know this.
Okay, just checking that my mic is working. Is that working?
No. Yeah.
I'll do a bit of a mix of shouting and speaking into my mic. Anyway, conscious you've heard the person behind the data and consumer study a million times in our presentation so far, and I've no idea what it actually is. So Ketch, we're new to market. We're about 3 years on the market, started in San Francisco and only this year into EMEA, based out of London. So coming into the UK, we conducted a study with 3,000 UK consumers to understand, one, how people genuinely feel about data privacy and what's important around that topic for consumers, and two, as a business, basically, why should you care? Like, what do good data practices mean for your business? How do you make a case to your C-level that actually data privacy is important? And what does it mean for revenue? How can you grow by getting data privacy right? So of these 3,000 consumers, 73% were the main purchasing decision maker in their household. Why that's relevant is basically just these were real people, shock horror, that had real influence on the purchasing decisions made in their homes. Hopefully, unsurprisingly to everyone in this room, people actually care about data privacy. And out of the 3,000 consumers, we asked them to rate between 1 and 10, how highly do they actually value data privacy as an ethical issue? And at least 67% rated them an 8, 9, or 10. So UK consumers, we did this study also in the US, results on this part were the same, really care. And this issue is only becoming more prominent. It is genuinely top of mind that people are realizing that companies all of a sudden know more about them than they actually know about themselves. So I want to pause on this part here because personally this is actually my favorite finding of this study. Out of these three obviously very important ethical issues, we asked these consumers, if you had to put one first, okay, what would you put as number one, data privacy, sustainability, or diversity and inclusion? I just want to ask a show of hands for who here would genuinely say data privacy as number one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. You're in the right place. Who here would say sustainability? Because genuinely I would have. And diversity and inclusion? These are all unbelievably important topics, and they're top of mind, especially sustainability, diversity, inclusion, for every business. It's in your annual report every year. How are you tackling sustainability? How are you tackling diversity and inclusion? There's metrics beside it. Why not the same for data privacy when 67% of the consumers put it number one? And as I put my hand up for sustainability, I genuinely would have said sustainability, even though I work in data privacy and I know how important it is. But this morning, when I was like panicked going over my presentation with my mom, I was like, what one here would you put first? And don't just say data privacy because you're talking to me. And she was like, yeah, data privacy. And I was like, you're lying. Why would you say data privacy? And she was like, no, genuinely, I hate the idea of a company knowing more about me than I realize, selling information about me that I'm not profiting off, and 3, getting marketing emails in my inbox every day. So I was like, okay, so marketing emails are more annoying than the demise of our planet, but fair enough. It shows that people genuinely are becoming more aware of the value of your data and what companies are doing with it, and whether they're handling it responsibly directly impacts us as consumers. So what we wanted to understand is, why is there this concern around data privacy? Like, what are people actually nervous about? How can we help mitigate these nerves, basically? Anyway, 77% said it's just how companies end up with our data and then what they do with it. People don't understand how all of a sudden you have their first name, last name, and location and what they like to buy, even though they consented to a cookie notice that they didn't really realize they accepted. So there's that fear of like, how do you know this about me? And then why do you need to know it about me? What are you doing with it when it goes into your thousands of technology systems in the back end? Like, who has access to it? You know, just why do you need it and how have you ended up with it? And that's where the concern is coming from. So how can we change this perspective? It's personalized preference centers. And that essentially is just giving consumers control over what data they're sharing with you and understanding how you've ended up with it. A cookie banner is just not good enough to accept all, and for people to want to. I'm guilty of trying to get on a website. If you're in a rush to try and like buy something in a sale, it's like, accept all, get me onto the website, forget about it. But then consumers are like, wait, how did you end up with my data? Well, you accepted a cookie notice, but you didn't actually realize, because it's just a blocker onto your website. So what do people want? I want to read this out because unfortunately I don't know this part off by heart. But Merliz was one of the consumers that we interviewed, and I think she put it really well in terms of what consumers are actually looking for. I hate actually standing behind a table, so I'm going to stand down here. She said, if I were to have total control, there'd be a list of everything that I can check and uncheck so that I have the power to know exactly what's being stored, for how long, for who, and for what general purpose. I'm manually choosing and unchoosing what I share and what's stored for how long. I hope everyone in this room realizes that that is just not too much to ask for. And it's very simply done. It's a mix of being transparent and giving control to consumers so that they understand how you've ended up with their data and they feel like their data is theirs. Like, your data is yours. You own your own data. I own my own data. So we should control where that goes and what people are doing with it. And it's very simple. Also an important point, especially for anyone marketing in the room, is 81% of consumers understand there is a benefit to sharing their data with a business. For me, I will give my data to ASOS all day long for like 30% off every Friday. Happy days, send me 30% off and I'll shop every Friday. I'm happy to get that email, but don't email me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday telling me that ASOS have released a new skirt or a new shirt. And it's like, I have a way that I want to be communicated with that should be respected by the brand. So 42% like the fact that you get a benefit from the company. I'm one of those, but there's also 40% like the fact that you're given their data for a personalized experience. You're hearing about what's relevant to you. So the message here is people will give you their data, but just be transparent and be honest about how you're collecting it, how long you're keeping it for, and what you're actually doing with it. So to the point that I made at the start of the presentation is like, how do we make a business case for data privacy? And how do we prove to like our C-levels that this is important and it's also going to help the business from a revenue perspective? We defined 4 categories of what makes good data practices and how those 4 categories impact purchase intent, trust, and brand preference. So those 4 categories are: 1, data minimization. Only collect the amount of data that you need to fulfill the purpose that you have communicated with the consumer. Basic enough. Retention period, only store that data for the amount of time that you actually need to hold that data for. That's a benefit on both sides, right? For the consumer, your data is not going, getting lost, at risk of being hacked if it's been stored in a system for 10 years and you've no idea, where in that system it is. But also for the businesses, your database is growing all the time. Your marketing database is growing all the time, and you're paying for storage for those contacts that you're not even using and aren't actually communicating with your brand anymore. Full transparency. I know I'm really driving this point home, but just be honest with the consumer about how you're collecting their data, what you're using it for. Simple. And then eliminate data sharing. Like, why should my data be shared with God knows how many other companies to communicate with me that I haven't consented to, that I don't care about, and that's diminishing my trust for the brand that shared that data. So they're good data practices. Tick those boxes, and the study has shown that 28% increase in purchase intent. To compare, this was 26% in the US. So this is top of mind for UK consumers. And what other topic gets consumers to tell you, I will literally buy from your brand if you just handle my data responsibly? And there's this idea that data control and data privacy is so complex. And where do I start? And it's so expensive. And God knows how many systems I have with data that I don't know how to leave it. Right? But this is your business case. There's a 28% increase in purchase intent. And of these 4 topics, in the UK, level of transparency was number 1. So although that might seem obvious, because I know I've really driven that point home at this point, it was retention period in the US. So US consumers wanted to know how long they were keeping their data for. In the UK, overwhelmingly, it was just be honest. Tell me how you're ending up with this. Tell me what you're doing with it. And then fair enough, you can have it because I perceive the benefit of giving you my data. So conscious, we are just throwing, for some people, lots of new findings from this consumer survey. And if you're walking away from this talk thinking, like, where do I start? Like, I'm working off Google Sheets, my data's everywhere, it's a mess, and this just isn't practical to do this full scale from the get-go. It's different in every industry what people's priorities are. So the idea I wanted to get across here is like, give you a starting point. So if you're in telco, 44% of consumers there said that they care about retention period. So just communicate with the people how long you're keeping it for, but also make sure you're following up with it. We're keeping your data for 3 years, and at those 3 years, we are making sure that that data is deleted. There's no point in communicating it with your consumers if you're not actually orchestrating it in your tech systems. But similar if you're in finance, data minimization. Just collect the minimum amount of data that you need for the purpose that you've communicated with the consumer. Fair enough. Ideally, you're going to tick all 4 boxes and enjoy 28% increase in purchase intent, but I know that you can't kind of change the whole world overnight, and it's just if you want to start somewhere, this is what your consumers are saying. So you'll be glad to hear that this is near the end of my voice, but overall, the implications and the findings of this survey is that data privacy genuinely builds trust, and it's an opportunity for your business to grow, compete in data-driven markets, and maximize where you're collecting data in different jurisdictions where it's, for example, opt-out. Don't implement opt-in, but do the right thing and be compliant with the data privacy laws that you're marketing in. Also, be transparent and give context to your consumers about how you're ending up with their data. It makes people less afraid of this whole data world that they don't understand and that they don't see. It's like, okay, I am ticking boxes of what I'm sharing my data with you, easy. And then it's trust. They trust your brand and they trust you to do the right thing. So that's the end of my speech. And I'm going to hand you back over to Charlie, who's going to help with giving you insight into how you can turn these findings into actions for your business.
Thank you, Leah. Everyone can hear me? Yes, there we go. So, how to turn these into action? So, very simple. Ketch's Trust by Design is a coordinated set of applications, APIs, and infrastructures. What does that mean? So, having responsive, scalable compliance, moving from that consent capture to consent orchestration, having always-on data discovery and flexible consent and preference management will allow you to comply with everyday regulations, not just now, but also in the future. Enforcing privacy choices everywhere, so making sure that you respect and enforce people's privacy choices with rights and granular control over downstream data applications. So where are we collecting this data from? Are we giving correct consent to that consumer at the point of collection? And last but not least, data intelligence. So understand the data footprint, harness the responsibly gathered data and use it to fuel core operations and top-line growth. And we can't forget, privacy is a team sport. So we need to bring together cross-function, cross-operational key stakeholders who actually have a hand in data. So I'm just going to chuck a question out to the floor now. Hands up in the room if you know your data counterpart, privacy counterpart within legal, IT, or marketing. Well done. You're on the road to programmatic privacy. That's brilliant. But everybody who didn't have the hands up, the question needs to be asked, okay? And our mission's very simple. We want to give businesses the power to be responsible stewards of consumer data. We typically see when you adopt a programmatic privacy and data stewardship stance, you will see a 12x ROI. And we do that in 3 building blocks. So first of all, mitigating compliance and reputational risk by moving away from that tick box mindset, helping to build trust in your brand. By moving to programmatic privacy, you can also collapse your compliance cost by 80%. And then you can utilize that good data, and you will have, which will allow you for data-driven growth. And here's just a few examples of brands that you see today that are thought leaders in actually moving and migrating from a checkbox mentality to programmatic privacy and actually achieving that 12x ROI. So you have a choice. You can either be disruptive or you can be the disruptor. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. You'd have heard me and Leah mention data stewardship a couple of times in today's presentation. We've got our colleagues, Carl and Stefan, having a talk in this theatre tomorrow at 3 p.m. So if you want to learn more about that journey to data stewardship, please come and join us. If not, we're going to be at stand 554, and we're actually having data drinks tonight at 5 p.m. So please, everybody, come on and join us for a few drinks. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it.